So that was a lot of information on terrestrial biomes. Hopefully you're stretching a little while you're paying attention to the next part. I want you to look for your information on aquatic biomes and think of at least 3 things that you already know about them from your notes about aquatic biomes. What do you know now? Now, a lot of this presentation, I'm just going to be showing you slides and you're going to have to pause and read it on your own because it's just a lot of notes. It's really heavy in notes. So the things you need to take away on aquatic biomes, we classify them by their water type, if they're fresh or salty. We classify them by their water depth, if they're deep or shallow, and if the water runs fast or slow. And in some cases, it doesn't run at all. So water type, water depth, and flow rate. Water type, water depth, and flow rate. You can pause and read the rest of this to yourself because I don't need to be reading. So in terrestrial biomes, according to the curriculum given by College Board, there are 3 essential knowledge points that you need to know about: freshwater biomes, marine biomes, and the global distribution of different types of water for resource use for humans. So we have our freshwater biomes are broken into these 3 categories: streams, rivers, lakes, ponds, and freshwater wetlands. And as I said, you're going to pause and you're going to read these things to yourself. But here's a little information about streams and rivers, and it's all about where the water comes from, okay? So streams are usually the narrow ones, rivers are usually wider and they carry more water. And remember, it's fresh water that comes from springs or it comes from melting snow. And here's an example of, we would call this a river because we have a lot of mixing and turbulent water here. And that turbulent water actually brings a lot of oxygen. The riparian zone is just all this vegetation on the side of a river or stream. In an aquatic biome, it could even be around the perimeter of a wetland. Riparian zone. And the riparian zone is the part where all the vegetation is, which is very important for third bullet, moderating temperature, slowing down runoff, and conserving the soil and helping the habitat thrive. You're going to pause this and you're going to read a little more that I know that you've probably learned about in middle school with rivers. Just remember your basics about a watershed. Lakes and ponds, you just need to know the different types of zones in them. So for lakes and ponds, they're always standing water. You go ahead and pause and remember and teach yourself the littoral zone, limnetic zone, phytoplankton, profundal zone, and the benthic zone. And get to know your pictures, study, test yourself, cover things, and try and tell yourself what these are, and then check your notes. Also in a lake can go through kind of like a life cycle. We started with oligotrophic, we move to eutrophic. They go through not much life, low productivity in the oligotrophic. This is shown by the crystal clear lake you would want to swim in. It's younger, it's great for water skiing. And then as more sediment accumulates in organic matter over many, many, many decades or hundreds of years, it becomes abundant in plant and algae and sediment. And this lake is not as great for swimming, but it's great for life and catching fish like bass. As I said, I'm just going to be flying through this. We have our freshwater wetlands. Make sure you read it to yourself. Look at your different types of wetlands like marsh, swamps, and bogs. And make sure that you understand the ecosystem services provided by wetlands. This is why they're important to humans, which is the piece of our course, humans and their interaction in the environment. Okay, moving on to marine biomes, you need to know about these 5. Salt marshes, which are similar to estuaries, mangrove swamps, intertidal zones, coral reefs, and open ocean. So we have our salt marsh. I think it's pretty obvious you've learned a lot about the Chesapeake Bay, so you probably know a lot about salt marshes. They're in estuaries, they're just smaller parts all around and within the estuary. It's brackish water. Salt marshes are incredibly productive biomes. We love them, we love them, we love them. They're good for biodiversity on the planet. Then we have mangrove swamps. And like I said, you're going to have to pause and look at this on your own. Mangrove trees are very salt tolerant and they're great. Mangrove swamps are great for protecting coastlines from erosion and storm damage. Then pay attention to our intertidal zones. Again, incredibly productive ecosystems. And our coral reefs, also incredibly productive, but we're losing more and more of our coral reefs every day to something called coral bleaching. We'll learn about that phenomenon even more, but start getting used to the terminology and what it means. And then we have our zones in the open ocean. So going to our next little piece of that essential knowledge, algae is all over water, and algae really does have a big play in supplying a large portion of Earth's oxygen and taking in the CO2. When you learn about photosynthesis, remember this with algae, and take a look at this chart and how significant algae is in producing oxygen for our planet. And last but not least, the global distribution of our water resources. We need the food, the medicine, cosmetics, and everything that comes from what's found in our waters. So just a little to remember, if you look at what's at the top here, salinity, depth, turbidity, nutrient availability, temperature, that all dictates what lives in the water. And what lives in the water has everything to do with our biodiversity. So just pay attention to the chart. I think it's self-explanatory. Pay attention to, different fish are going to be found in different zones. And we also have a lot about our freshwater fish. And here we're looking at temperature ranges. So just to remind you, we have some differences between terrestrial and aquatic biomes, but you know how it works right now. And the next thing we're going to move into is carbon cycle. Have a great day.